The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has been out for a while now, and there is just so much to unpack. Players keep finding new secrets, ancient lore, new collectibles, and with all of this stuff that Tears of the Kingdom has provided us, it's hard to know what's canon and what's not. And with the events that take place during Tears of the Kingdom, it seems like parts of Hyrule's history has been rewritten. I'm JD from JD Arcady, and this is the new History of Hyrule. How do we define what is canon and what's just a simple reference? I mean, how do we determine that? Do we just follow the main story and ignore the outcomes of side quests? I mean, side quests are optional, so that may be the case. For example, in Breath of the Wild, there was the Hateno Village side quest called Hylian Homeowner. In this side quest, you would drop a bunch of cash on Bolson the Carpenter and he would restore a house for Link to live in. It even has a sign out the front that says Link's house. But in Tears of the Kingdom, the direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, when you return to Hateno Village, not a single person remembers Link. Some people even ask if you're a tourist. You have to reintroduce yourself to everyone, which seems a little strange seeing as Link has been living in this village for years now. But the people of Hateno Village seem to think that this house belongs to Princess Zelda. I guess Link simply offered Zelda his house to live in, seeing as Hyrule Castle is in complete disrepair since the calamity. We also have to remember that Tears of the Kingdom is a lot of people's first Zelda game, so an element of introduction to characters is kind of important, otherwise people would just be completely lost. However, in contrast to the characters of the side quests, the characters of the main story seem to have no trouble remembering Link whatsoever and his efforts to defeat Calamity Ganon. Let's take a look at the Zoras as an example. Throughout the Lanayru region, we can find stone carvings depicting the adventures of Prince Sidon and his battle with Link against Divine Beast Varuta. There is even a statue of Link and Sidon in the main area of Zora's domain. So it seems that the characters associated with the main story from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom remember Link and his deeds, but characters associated with the side quests don't. And I'm putting that down to the optional side quest theory. Players aren't required to complete the side quests to finish the game. You don't even have to complete the Divine Beasts for that matter. In Breath of the Wild, once you complete the Great Plateau segment, you can go straight to Hyrule Castle and defeat Calamity Ganon, if you're good enough. Picture this scenario. The people of Hyrule thought that Zelda's appointed knight fell to the Calamity and had no idea that he was in the slumber of restoration. 100 years later, Link wakes up and heads straight for Hyrule Castle without even picking up the Master Sword and defeats Calamity Ganon without a word to anyone. People would have no idea who this Link guy is. He was supposed to have died 100 years prior. So Calamity Ganon was sealed away by Princess Zelda and the people of Hyrule knew peace once more and no mention of Link was ever made. That could be the reason why people don't remember Link in Tears of the Kingdom, but there are major holes in that theory, the main one being the characters associated with the main storyline definitely remember his deeds. If that hypothetical scenario that I just laid out was true, then why is there a statue of Link with Sidon in Zora's domain? I think it's safe to assume that it's the main quest that connects Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and the side quests are just an added bonus. That was just a simple continuity thing that I noticed between the games. Something else most people have noticed is the references to previous titles. Little Easter eggs here and there that make the player say, oh wow, that's so cool, I look just like the hero of time, or hey, Link's dressed like the fierce deity and he even has the fierce deity sword. That's so cool. But how and why? Misko the Bandit apparently stole these treasures from the royal family and scattered them throughout Hyrule. But how did he come across them? Some of it just doesn't make sense. I have mentioned this in a previous video from a while ago before Tears of the Kingdom was released. And it's no secret that I'm not a massive fan of the Legend of Zelda timeline, but it is official and I do acknowledge it. There is a theory that the timelines have converged at some point, so if that were true, it would be possible to find items, gear, weapons from previous heroes in Tears of the Kingdom. Like the Dusk Bow, Midna's Helm, the Tunic of Time, the Big Goron Sword, the Tunic of Awakening, and a heap of other armor sets from previous games. There was one weapon I was a little iffy about, and that was the White Sword of the Sky. You get it as a reward from the goddess statue in the Forgotten Temple. When I first got it, I was like, no, this can't exist. The goddess White Sword is the Master Sword. You forge it into the Master Sword. You can't have the goddess White Sword and the Master Sword at the same time. You can't do that. But then I read the actual name of the blade and it's the White Sword of the Sky, and it is an identical design to the goddess White Sword, but it's probably just a replica that was used by the Knights of Skyloft. My point is that Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have these little Easter eggs that confuse the timeline. From Misko's journal and other reports, we learned that they stole these treasures and relics from the royal family. But how did the royal family get their hands on these items in the first place? I've said it before, but with each new installment installment of Zelda, questions are answered, but even more questions are raised. And Tears of the Kingdom does exactly that by introducing a powerful race of beings who lived in the sky high above. Who are the Zonai? Beings with godlike powers that descended upon the land long, long ago. In the early scenes of Tears of the Kingdom, Princess Zelda explains that her royal lineage comes from a union between Hylians and gods.
It is said that my ancestors, the first of Hyrule's royal family, were born from a union with gods who had descended from the heavens.
This union was between Rauru, the leader of the Zonai, and Sonia of the Hylians. So without question, it's obvious that the royal family has Zonai blood, although it may have significantly lessened over the course of history. After completing the Spirit Temple, Minoru, the Sage of Spirit, who is also Rauru's sister, tells Link more of the Zonai heritage.
Long ago, my people, known as the Zonai, came down from the heavens to the surface of the world. It was said they were descendants of gods.
It is said they were descendants of gods, so no actual confirmation. And then in another memory, we see Ganondorf speaking to Rauru, and he says this.
When your Zonai ancestors first descended upon these lands long, long ago, they must have seemed to be gods. And now you rule as king, and have taken a Hyrulean woman as your wife. Your Majesty has certainly risen above your admirable lineage. Most impressive.
Judging by the wording and the language used to describe the early Zonai, we can't really determine if they were gods or not. Maybe the early Hylians mistook the Zonai for gods, but they were just actually talented magic wielders. Or Ganondorf was just being rude and intentionally insulting Rauru. Before I go into more detail about this, I want to point out something a little interesting. In Tears of the Kingdom, the first king of Hyrule and Sage of Light was the Zonai known as Rauru.
My name is Rauru, King Rauru of Hyrule.
In Ocarina of Time, the Sage of Light in that game was also named Rauru. He constructed the Temple of Time, which contained the only existing entrance to the sacred realm where the Triforce was located. It may just be a coincidence that these two figures share the same name, or perhaps they are the same person. On page 361 of Creating a Champion, there is a paragraph that reads that the Kingdom of Hyrule has a long, long history. So long, in fact, that the events that occurred leading up to its founding and in its early years have faded into myth. Hyrule's recurring periods of prosperity and decline have made it impossible to tell which legends are historical fact and which are mere fairy tale. So it could be that the events of Ocarina of Time have been muddled over the generations. I did sort of talk about that in my Return of the King video, and I'll probably go into more detail about this new origin of Hyrule in part 2 of this series. Seeing as Princess Zelda traveled back in time and met the Zonai King Rauru, who is the Sage of Light, we must conclude that this is the accurate version of events. The fact being that Princess Zelda was there. I'm so sorry about that digression, but I promise you, there is a point to my rambling. But back to what I was saying about the Zonai being descendants of gods. Even if the Zonai weren't gods themselves, there is a connection between the gods and the Zonai. Artifacts gifted to the ancient Zonai.
They bore treasures from these same gods, secret stones capable of amplifying the abilities of those who possessed them.
The secret stone of the Zonai. How interesting.
Secret stones. In Tears of the Kingdom, Ganondorf's lust for power is what drives him to steal the secret stone from Queen Sonia. This secret stone amplifies his already awesome powers of sorcery and transforms him into the Demon King. One thing I would like to know is the limits of the secret stones. Are you able to wield more than one? Would a mortal be destroyed if they tried to claim other secret stones? In Tears of the Kingdom, Link travels all over Hyrule finding these secret stones, which are gifted to the sages who aid him in his quest. The stones are being guarded by Ganondorf's monsters, Colgera, Makdarok, Queen Gibdo, Marbled Goma, and the Seized Construct. So if Ganondorf knew where these stones were, why didn't he just take them for himself and just become purely immortal? Maybe he would have just been destroyed in the process, who knows? Or what about this? Have the secret stones replaced the Triforce? Maybe the secret stones were created to combat the forces of the Triforce should it fall into the wrong hands. What if secret stones are shards of the Triforce? That would be insane, but that is a wild theory. So far in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the Triforce isn't mentioned at all, nor is the Sacred Realm, aside from when Zelda's using her sacred power.
Final hope. Your sword. She is the key to destroying the Demon King.
But in saying that, there is Triforce symbolism everywhere. Lookout Landing has it, the soldier's armor has it, it's in the Temple of Time ruins, and there is a giant Triforce carved into the wall of the Sanctum in Hyrule Castle. And this one even depicts the symbols of the goddesses Din, Faror, and Nehru. So I think it would be safe to assume that the people of Hyrule still believe in the creation story of the three goddesses. The Triforce may still be in play, even if it's not explicitly shown. In Ocarina of Time, in order to protect the Triforce, Hyrule Castle was built in the center of Hyrule, where the Temple of Time was located. The royal family watched over the Triforce, keeping its existence unknown to others. Maybe that's the case in Tears of the Kingdom. Rauru knows of the existence of the Triforce, but tells absolutely no one. Having the absence of the Triforce speaks more to the story development of The Legend of Zelda. How many titles have there been where the Triforce was the focus or the driving force of events for the story? It's a little refreshing to see The Legend of Zelda go in a different direction. As fantastic as it would be to get confirmation on certain facts, Nintendo has provided us with a game where our imaginations are what create the limitations. The Ultra Hand ability is proof of that. The ambiguity of the language that is used throughout the game gives players the opportunity to create their own headcanon and discuss with other players what could be, coming up with their own theories and potential lore. There is no going back now. The Zelda we knew with linear structure and direction is a thing of the past. Plus, on that note, with people sharing ideas and theories of what could happen, some ideas are so brilliant that Nintendo could potentially incorporate it into their story. Not just playtesting mechanics or working out bugs and glitches, but actual ideas that affect the lore of the franchise. An example of this would be NPCs following you around and helping you out on your adventure. Ages ago, I heard people talking about how great that would be. I remember Egoraptor, Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps, mentioned that in his Zelda Sequelitis video years ago. He gave an example of having a Goron helper assisting you through dungeons, and then Breath of the Wild came out and we had Yonobo helping us traverse Death Mountain. I'm not saying that Egoraptor was the first person to have that idea. My point is that Nintendo listens to the players, especially if it's a good idea. Speaking of good ideas, if you've made it to this part of the video, make sure you leave a comment with your headcanon or what you think is an interesting Zelda theory that is just pure gold. And if you want, you could subscribe to enjoy more Zelda related content. Right now I'm doing a Tears of the Kingdom playthrough, which has sort of evolved into a visual journal of Link's adventure. Be sure to catch part 2 of the new History of Hyrule, where I go deeper into the origins of some well-known characters and explore the era of myth.